Gold blurts out these unpleasant truths, you know. It confers freedom, and that's the big thing, actually. It confers economic freedom.
Hello and welcome to VRIC Media, where our mission is to educate you on how to make money in the commodities sector. I'm your host, Ted Butler, and today I'm very glad to be joined by a good friend from across the Irish Sea, Mark O'Byrne. Mark was the founder of Goldcore, one of the world's leading gold brokers today, and he's still very much engaged in the gold business today with his new venture, Tara Coins, which we'll talk about today. Mark, it's a pleasure to have you on the show at this exciting time for gold and silver.
It's great to be on the show with you, Ted, and really enjoyed talking to you in recent months and seeing the work you're doing. It's great to see a young man. You remind me of myself, actually, many years ago when I started out the business.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mark. I really appreciate that. So I want to start with something. Back in 2011, you were kind of drafted into the mainstream for this Bloomberg interview. And you warned about how gold could be poised for a parabolic increase in the years to come. Obviously, since then it has done. But we're in a similar position today where gold is starting to go mainstream. Sky News here in the UK just asked, why are people rushing to the safe haven gold? Beyond that, the economist Mohammed Al-Aryan just published a column in the Financial Times titled, Why the West Should Be Paying More Attention to the Gold Price Rise. Obviously, this is pretty unprecedented for the mainstream media that we've come to love and know. Do you think gold going mainstream like this signifies the top of the bull market this time, or do you think it's different for gold? In other words, do you think we could be actually pushing towards $3,000 here?
I think it's very, very different, and I think it feels more like 2007,
right?
2000 rather than 2011, you know. And no, I don't think it's anywhere near the top because the dollar hasn't bottomed, nor has the euro or any of these fiat currencies. Right. So yeah, it's interesting, but it's interesting to get a feel for where are we in this, bull market in gold and silver, which is ultimately a bear market in the dollar and other fiat currencies. So yeah, it's funny. Even 2008, I like when I founded Gold Course 2003. And gold was about $300, $350. And I remember even when gold went to about $500, $600, people saying, oh, look, gold's doubled in value. Why would you buy something that's doubled in value? It's gone from $300 to $600. And I remember, gold was on the front page of Financial Times in, 2006 because the price of gold had doubled. And people are trying to be contrarian about it and say, oh, look, it's on the front page of the Financial Times. It's double in value. It must be the top of the bull market. And at the time, like the debt levels were going parabolic, both public debt, private debt. We had incipient property bubbles. There was geopolitical risk, not as much geopolitical risk as there is in the world today, but there was very significant macroeconomic risk. And monetary risk to a degree, not to the degree there is today. So it feels a lot more like, as I said, 2007. I think we're on the verge of a, big, monetary crisis, because ultimately it's the monetary, it's the money, it's follow the money. The money informs everything else, and we tend to divide these things into economics, finance, politics, and then money is almost separate, and particularly monetary economics. So the money is the key, and I think we're on the verge of a massive monetary crisis. We have been in one for years, a low-level one, but I think it's going to become more obvious to the masses. So I think it's very, very interesting times to be doing what we do, and there is a massive crisis. I think, and I've thought this for years, and I've been wrong, and I hope I'm wrong again, because I thought we would have more of a crisis. Even 2012, I thought things will get worse before they get better. And like a lot of people in our space, I underestimated the power of the central banks in terms of their ability to kick the can down the road.
Right.
But I think we're towards the end of that road now, and I think, there is a lot of things that come together, particularly the geopolitical things. I think we're going to speak briefly, obviously, about the BRIC situation. And war is very, very destructive ultimately for economies, finance, and for currencies as well, because they just start accelerating the debasement via the massive increase in supply via this digital. They just go digital now. At least before they had to print the paper, whereas now it's obviously just digitally created the dollars, and it's just incredible the amount of debt. 100 trillion in public debt alone now. So everyone's focused on the US national debt, but it's a global phenomenon, and the debt is just astronomical, public and private. And then there's off-balance sheet liabilities as well, So, and the war is going to exacerbate a lot of these problems, So, so those little things. Mohammed Al-Arian, he's an interesting guy, and I think that will lead to demand from investors. Obviously, they will look at this and probably see more demand, particularly for ETFs. But it's interesting. The media hasn't really covered that much. I've been amazed the last 3, 4, 5 months. I think they're being forced to. I think maybe they're being shamed to. I wouldn't be surprised if some of the readers are getting onto the like I used to have to do. I used to have to get onto the journalists and the editors and the producers of the TV shows and say, guys, this is a big story. You should really be covering this. And so I think.
Well, it's not only. Sorry to interrupt, Mark. It's not only
no
the mainstream media who are ignoring it, but it's also some financial advisor, and that's what really grates me, and that's what ultimately caused me to abandon my career pursuit as a financial advisor, to bang the drum for gold and silver, because the fact that it's not been allocated for. Perhaps there needs to be more of an incentive to do so for these financial advisors, but I would argue that the cost of not advising gold and silver at this point, in light of what we've just experienced over the last couple of years since I dropped out of uni, like the cost of doing that, like surely the reputational damage of a client coming to you and saying, Mr. Financial Advisor, you didn't advise gold when it's gone up like 40, 50%, last few months. What am I paying you for?
Yeah. I agree. I've always been shocked about how it's an industry, the financial industry, and financial advisors, how it's just, even now after, like I could understand it in the year 2000, year 2003, you've had a massive bear market in gold and silver. You've had a massive bull market in stocks. So, back then it was early, you could understand how you could recommend a portfolio of stocks and bonds, and they saw bonds as the safe haven component of a portfolio. Right. We actually had a wealth management division in Goldcore, So, we employed a chartered financial planner, and we had very low cost, globally diversified portfolios. And we would basically say, right, within that portfolio, you have 3, 5, 7% of your allocation to gold, and all the data was there, all the research, huge amount of academic research has been done over the years, and I used to be amazed that why are we even having a debate that people in the mainstream media could say it's a barbaric relic? And I'd say there's not actually a debate to be had here. The evidence is here. Right. If you're truly about the facts and truly about the truth, let's look at the evidence, let's look at the empirical data, let's look at it, and all the data showed, and there was academic papers published saying gold goes up, it's a hedge, it has inverse correlations or negative correlations, particularly with stocks. It goes up, it acts as a hedge. Stocks goes down, gold goes up. You have to have in a portfolio, so it's how they can justify it now. It's beyond me, especially because the bonds, which are meant to be the safe haven component of the portfolio, bonds are, the US is bankrupt. So the US treasuries, which we used to call the risk-free rate of return, they're not risk-free. They're far from risk-free. They're a huge, huge risk, whether it be US treasuries or German bonds. All these massive debtor nations, their bonds are likely to lose massive value, and the interest rates are going to go higher. So, and then the stock markets, as we know, look very, very toppy indeed and have done for a while. So, financial advisors, I don't want to be condemning them because, they're in their own little echo chambers and they're in their own little bubbles, and there's lots of good ones there, but they really need to, they need to be encouraged to. We don't need to get into name calling or shaming them, but they need to look at the data, look at the facts, and say, come on, especially given what's going to happen now in the next few years, as we're all pretty clear that it's going to be a bumpy ride. The only question is how bumpy is it, and how deep is the recession going to be? And there will be a recession. It's just part of the cyclical nature. There should be no fear around that. It's part of the cycle. And we're going into that part of the cycle where we have a recession and we could have potentially depression. So you're right. They need to look at it and they need to diversify their clients. And if they don't, their clients will suffer financially. Yeah.
That's absolutely true. And, I don't want to be too resentful towards them or cynical towards them. I just feel so strongly about it. And the way I use it, I've got a few analogies. It's almost like, going into a football match without a defense or without your goalkeeper. Or it's like going into the red light district without contraception. It's like, you don't do these things. You don't put yourself in that level of risk without having gold, like with all the counterparty risks that we have today. But one thing, Mark, I wanted to talk about, aside from those humorous analogies, is silver. And, as we know, typically and historically, when gold goes, silver tends to follow in this slingshot fashion. And we actually wrote about this using the gold-silver ratio from 1800, which is 30-1, in the In Gold We Trust report earlier this year, and we might be able to pull it up on screen. Basically, we, at a 30-1 historical median of the gold-silver ratio, if we're talking at the 2,700 gold price, which I still can't believe, to be honest, an 80 gold-silver ratio, we're talking $34 silver. At 30 gold-silver ratio, we're talking $90 silver. At 20 gold-silver ratio, we're talking $135 silver. So people seem to think that these numbers are kind of like, foreign, but actually, our mutual friend David Morgan, if you look at the gold-silver ratio over history, he wrote about this in the Silver Manifesto. If you look at ancient Egypt, the gold-silver ratio was 9. If you look at Greece, 15, Rome, 14.5, 10, 7.5 with Julius Caesar, Spain, 10 during the 1400s, China, 6.7. The list goes on, but basically, before 1720, the gold-silver ratio was pretty much below 15. Where do you think silver is headed in light of that today, given that we're, around an 80 gold-silver ratio today? What could the future be for silver?
Well, it's much higher, and it's a function of the dollar being much lower. But you're right to look to history. It's that's absolutely fascinating. I didn't know. I knew roughly that the ratio has been roughly between. Sometimes it's as low as 3-1 and 5-1. Obviously, if you got a big find of a gold mine near Egypt, as an example, say North Sudan, there was a big find of a gold mine, then there'll be an increase in supply of gold, and then the ratio would come down, So there was periods of time in different countries, it was always based on, ultimately on supply demand, and what the people felt was the rough, quantity of each metal, and that would obviously inform the ratio, So that's very interesting that, you pointed out a few that Julius Caesar 7.5 is interesting. And I've long thought and written about this for many years, that I thought the ratio would get back to, I think geologically in the Earth's crust, David Morgan, a great man who I've learned a lot from over the years, himself, Mike Maloney in particular, two of the guys that I learned a huge amount from. And he's very strong on the gold silver ratio, and a ratio of 10-15-1 is to me it's almost certain. And when I was writing about this I started doing a blog in 2005. I did a daily market update nearly every single day from 2005 on. So I was sleeping and drinking gold and silver, and I always had I preferred silver, actually, because I could see that silver was cheaper even then, but also it has been the money of the people throughout history, So, and people were very negative on silver because it was always, it's volatile. It's like, it's volatile, but its volatility is, not as volatile as any of the stocks that someone might be buying. The volatility might be akin to the volatility on, the S&P 500, not quite, but not far off it, So I always thought silver was undervalued because, it was about the $4.50, $5 per ounce back in the early days. Gold coin was gradually going up, and then it went to $10, and people said it doubled. People who were never positive on silver, but when it doubled to 10 and then doubled to 20, they were negative. Like, it's like there was nothing ever said positive by silver in the mainstream media. I was always shocked by it, So I felt the need to compensate and to bang the drum for silver, and I still do. So in terms of ratios, I think geologically, the USGS, they say the ratio is I think it's about 15-1. They say,
Yeah.
you know, and then it's interesting that, you know, as recently of 1980, so we're $850 per ounce gold, and we are $50 per ounce silver. So that's roughly what, 16-17-1 in 1980. And then again in 2011, we got gold up to what, 1,800, and silver up to 50. I know it was only momentarily, but the ratio came right down there again, you know. So I think that's going to happen. I think the next time it happens, I don't think it'll be a volatile one-off spike that we saw in 1980, 2011. Right. I think it'll be a longer term thing, you know. I think there will be a reset in the silver price to much higher levels, you know, have a lot of volatility on the way there. But yeah, so it could go as low as, interest in China, 6.7. So yeah, so if gold is at $6,700 per ounce, that means that silver divided by 6.7, silver's at $1,000 per ounce.
Right.
So that sounds extreme. I know it sounds very extreme, and no one should be basing anything in terms of, you know, when they buy silver based on price predictions, because again, it's a function of how low the dollar goes, you know, and there's so many variables that nobody knows. Nobody's a crystal ball. But it's money, and you should own it as money rather than as a speculation that you're going to sell when it gets to a certain price, you know, because its value is based on not on its price but on its value to buy goods and services, particularly the necessities of life. I always loved the ratio of gold and silver to bread, and you could buy roughly 400 loaves of bread, 300 to 400 loaves of bread throughout history at 1 ounce of gold, you know, and that was Greek times, Roman times, Egyptian times. And today, 2,700 divided by 400, you get some very nice bread at $6.50, you know. So, and it's an interesting way to look at it, because I think the price of bread is going up, and I think the price of bread is going to go up more. And I think, you know, we'll see inflation go into the commodity markets in terms of the price of wheat and the price of food, you know. So I think, so then when that happens, then you're going to protect your purchasing power. And similarly with silver, you know. So the price of silver, yeah, it's going to go a lot higher. That's all we can say, you know. But I think the numbers of $100 or $200 to me are that's being quite conservative, genuinely, you know. And
do you think, Mark? Do you think it'll settle around these levels? I know you mentioned that, you know, you don't think it's going to fall back down again. I've believed that, you know, we could have a new price floor around 50, with given the demand from solar and all these different areas, and especially if there's a resurgence of monetary demand from, you know, Western investors, or even people forget India, you know, like gold's become kind of out of reach for a lot of the population there and gifts and jewelry. And if we see some of that demand shift to silver, you know, it won't take much at all.
No, I agree 100%. I mean, the supply demand fundamentals are just so bullish, you know, and they have been for a while, and massive deficits, and that hasn't been reflected in the price yet. But it looks like it's about to, I mean, $33. 33 is an interesting
number. 34 the other day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, technically, there's a lot of resistance around that level, and it's an important number, an interesting number. And I think once we go get a weekly or monthly close above that number, I think we could move quite quickly up to 40, potentially see a bit of resistance there. And then obviously there should be resistance, you would think, around 50 as well. But yeah, no, I think $50 will become a floor, maybe even $100. You know, I think we'll go parabolic in time. The question is always the time. I think a lot of us have gotten these things right, but the time, it's taken longer than we thought it would. And obviously, that's in large part to do with manipulation, you know. So because they've been using the futures market to sit in it, but that little game is coming to an end, as we know, because of the demand of whatever it is, 8.5, 9 billion people on the planet, and the demand of those people, whether it be small peasants in India buying silver, as you alluded to there, or billionaires in China buying silver and gold. And there are billionaires. The amount of billionaires in the world today is astronomical. You know, there's very few billionaires. I have friends of mine who compare silver to, say, 1979, when the Hunt brothers cornered the market, and they say, "Oh, well, look, the Hunt brothers tried to corner the market. Look what happened." And I was like, "Well, it was a very different world back then. You know, the US was one of the few places that had freely traded markets, and there was a lot of power in the COMEX, and that's where the inventories were. And they were one family of billionaires, whereas today there's thousands and thousands of billionaires all around the world, you know, not just in America.
Do
And
you think we could never have something like that again? I mean, the silver market's still small. You know, there
we
could
could.
be. I'm not. You know, I personally believe that. I'm not sure if the manipulation today is as coordinated. You know, I do believe that there is short-term moments where the stars align for some of these bankers or banksters, as the late Ted Butler would call them. Rest in peace to him, by the way, because he was a great figure for the space.
He was, yeah. Rest in peace, Ted.
And yeah, I mean, just in the sense, do you think that we could have another Hunt Brothers moment? Do you think that's possible?
I do. Yeah, because the supply is just so small, and
Right.
above ground refined supply is very, very small, and all it would take. And obviously, we've heard, the news in recent days about Russia in terms of the sovereign, buying silver, So, I think it's only a matter of time. I mean, it's a bit of a no-brainer, really. I was writing about this in 2006, 2007, and so I'm really amazed that it hasn't happened.
Yeah.
So it could be one thing, though, is sometimes I do wonder, is there more above ground supply than we're aware of,
Yeah.
But there is that possibility, and even the gold supply, I've seen some gold in some big vaults around the world. I've been in most of the big private vaults, comics vaults in different places. And I've seen a fair bit of gold. So there could be more. I don't think it's multiples more. I don't think gold is, I think it is very, very rare, and it is finite, and so is silver. But there could be more above ground supply than we're aware of in certain countries, including obviously in China and Russia and India. So that's potentially.
But the reality is, though, Marcus, sorry to interrupt again, is the current silver price, or at least the last few weeks and months, hasn't been sufficient to pry that silver out of the hands of private investors. It's not been enough. So we're still at, 200 million ounces roughly deficits annually. So the only solution to close that deficit is higher prices, because that's what will cause the recyclers to hand over the silver. That's what will cause private investors to hand over the silver. And ultimately, that's what will help incentivize mining companies to go and mine for silver. But a lot of it is, as we know, secondary as a result of copper, lead, zinc mining. So it's not as simple as going out and finding a primary silver deposit, because there's not a lot, not many of them.
Exactly.
Fortunate enough to be going to some of them and seeing them over the coming weeks, but still, it's not likely. But anyway, Mark, I do want to shift the conversation. You mentioned Russia and this sort of silver purchases, and that Putin focus may be shifting, towards platinum and palladium. But let's not forget, like, the amount of gold buying has been astronomical. Now, Russia's central bank's gold reserves now represents 31.5% of the total reserves. The central bank buying is set to continue across other countries now, to like Mexico, Mongolia, Czech Republic, as you rightly pointed out on your Twitter. I'm curious to know about what your thoughts are on the Irish central bank, given that that's where you're based. But I want to know more specifically why you think central banks are gravitating towards gold as the solution at this time. And do you think it could potentially form a wider return back to gold as part of the monetary system?
I do. Yeah, I do. I think that's why part of the reason why they're diversifying into physical gold bullion, and they're increasing their gold reserves. I think they're aware that the dollar is exposed, and then they're aware that basically makes their foreign exchange reserves exposed, because most of their foreign exchange reserves are in dollars, but also makes their own fiat currencies vulnerable, So, and their remit is to maintain faith in those fiat currencies, and the last thing they need is their citizens of their nations to start not trusting the fiat currencies, because then you will see a run into gold and silver, as we have never seen before, not in modern times. So yeah, and they've also told us, in some of their writings, some of their quotations at different talks I used to attend the LMA every year, and frequently would have official central bank speakers, and some of them were very candid, and they said it's a hedge against like worst case scenarios, emergency, world war, you're really sort of your ultimate financial insurance, basically, against really bad things, and so they're clear about that. It's not just a hedge per se. It's they see it as monetary insurance. So so this trend we're seeing, it's funny. I mean, I remember writing about it, but back in when obviously there was the Browns bottom when Gordon Brown sold the UK gold, which was crazy, like right at the bottom of the market. Yeah, exactly. And was it a mistake, or was it a way they were the Labour Party? I think were trying to get the UK into the EMU, into the European Monetary Union. They were trying to get into the euro, and you didn't, which is, I think that's one thing that I don't know. One thing is probably other thing as well. But it's lucky that you have control of your own money supply. Obviously, there's huge issues in the UK. There's huge issues in every country today, because we're all on fiat currencies and we all have governments that are living beyond their means, and we don't have sane and rational fiscal and monetary policies. So in terms of the question, in terms of the central banks, yes, I mean, it's a long-term trend. I think the trend could actually accelerate. They've gone from being net sellers to being net buyers, and the trend seems to be accelerating, and also it seems to be becoming more widespread. So there's a wider array of central banks that are buying gold. So the Irish Central Bank should buy more gold. I've encouraged them in mainstream media in Ireland many years ago, and in blogs and in market updates and in well written academic pieces showing why it's a monetary asset, that they should do it, but they haven't. They bought a small amount. They bought a few tons. They have a minuscule amount of gold. So, but ultimately, I think what we truly need, the gold standard could be good, and I think we will possibly through because of a decline of trust in fiat currencies. I think they'll be forced to move to some form of gold, gold standard, partially go back, to try and restore faith in the fiat currencies when people lose faith in them, which I think is going to happen in the next 3, 5, 7 years. But I think ultimately that would be good in some ways. But at the end of the day, I think it'd be better if we went back to the people themselves. We need to be using it as a form of saving, and also as a means of exchange. That can be done the old ways with actual coinage. There's nothing wrong with that. People still use cash and coins, and there should always be a place for cash and coins. So it is a means of exchange. So we need to move back to that. But it's also a store of value in the form of saving, and I see gold more almost as a savings vehicle, and silver more as sort of your means of exchange. Right. So that's what I'd love to see is in the hands of the people, because if we go back to that again and we trust the central banks again, and they have all the gold in the vaults and they monopolize the ownership of the gold in their vaults, and then they give us tokens that they say are backed by the gold, it's ripe for abuse, and it can be abused again, So we're better off just saying, well, rather than having these things that are backed by gold, why don't we use actual gold and silver,
Quick break here. This episode is brought to you by West Red Lake Gold Mines. Now, if you know nothing about West Red Lake Gold Mines, let me tell you one thing. This company was founded on the back of a transaction where they purchased the Madsen mine in northwestern Ontario in an area called the Red Lake Gold District, which to date has produced around 30 million ounces of gold from some of the richest gold deposits in the world. Now, what they paid for this mine versus what they got has led legendary mining entrepreneur Frank Giustra to call this transaction the deal of the decade. And Bob Moriarty, founder of 321 Gold, was recently on my show calling West Red Lake Gold Mines one of the 2 most undervalued gold companies in Canada. If you're curious why these individuals are so excited about West Red Lake Gold Mines, hit the link below to learn more. Now back to the episode.
So
I completely agree. And I think it would instill a lot of discipline into people, make them consider, before they make an international transaction, is this really worth it? We have all this rehypothecation going on where, a lot of the money is just kind of like, created again out of nothing for these banks. And, it doesn't, it's not conducive to the stability of money. It's very inflationary. And ultimately, the fact that the government continues to print money at will, gives us no stable base from which to build as a society, and makes it difficult, very, very difficult for my generation at this time. Where house prices are becoming further and further out of reach, and the disparity between our incomes, real incomes, is distancing from these basic things that we need to live. Like a mortgage, or the old American dream, or British dream, Irish dream, whatever you want to call it. It's now more of a luxury for the wealthy, or the people who've inherited money from parents or whatever. If you're a working person today in the UK or Ireland and you're earning the basic wage as a young person, good luck getting a mortgage, because it's not possible.
No.
One of the solutions, we want to talk about solutions today instead of moaning about the problem, as worthwhile as that is. Cryptocurrencies is being pitched as a solution by my generation. What are your thoughts on that, Mark?
Yeah, well, just to circle back, what you're saying there, but you're right, we need to focus on the solutions. What you're saying there, it's interesting that one of the solutions, I love that expression, necessity is the mother of invention. So, it's like needs must. And when people have to do certain things, they do certain things. And I think that's what's going to happen with gold and silver. And it's interesting that in the US now, exactly because the young people, they can't afford to buy a basic, like tiny little studio apartment, they can't get on the property ladder. And it's been difficult for a long time. It's got even more difficult. It's gotten so difficult that they've given up on it, in effect, But what's interesting is there's a positive that's coming out of that, is that these young people are actually looking at gold and silver for the first time, and Bitcoin, as you alluded to. And so we see this in the data from Costco, and Costco are saying it's very interesting, the younger demographic of buyers coming into the gold and silver market, because they're trying to save up enough money to get the deposit in the house. The deposits, they need a massive deposit because it's so unaffordable. The salaries haven't kept up with the inflation. So they're beginning to realize, okay, I'm not saving with dollars in the bank. With this inflation, also there's worries about different banks in the States. They've got into difficulty. So the younger generation, for the first time ever, are buying gold and silver. And Costco are telling us that, and other dealers in the US, coin dealers, are saying they're seeing younger buyers come in, and they're seeing young women come in as well. It's nearly always been dominated by men. Right. It's been mostly, in my business, it was mostly men. 50s, 60s, 70s where was the primary demographic. There was a healthy smashing of women, but it was nearly all, majority was men, So, so that is interesting. But they are being seduced a bit by, the mainstream media and a few, the likes of Michael Saylor and Max Kaiser. I used to have a lot of respect for Max Kaiser. And I still do, but I think he needs to be more balanced, and I think he needs to be fair to gold and silver, and he needs to encourage a debate on them, as we all do. We need to have debates about these things, So my view on Bitcoin is I quite liked it when it first came on the scene, because there was lots of positive qualities, and it did mimic a lot of the benefits of gold in terms of the potential to be certain things, but it was always potential, and it was being positioned as a means of exchange because it's got limited supply, and they bought a pizza with it. Remember, that was the big thing,
Right.
But then it went from being a means of exchange to becoming, we're all going to get rich, and it will be the money in the future, but we're all going to get rich in the meantime. It's like, but that's not what money's about. That's not what a means of exchange is about. And then they were saying it's a store of value, but you can't have a store of value that goes up 5% one day and down 10% the next day. The volatility is. Yeah. So, and the other thing with a store of value is gold is it's durable, it's fungible, it's portable. It has a lot of key qualities, and silver, and that's why they've stood the test of time. It's fungible, which means it's interchangeable. So, 1 ounce. I'll show you. I know we're going to talk about this briefly, but I'll show you one of my little babies here. So this is the silver tree of life. Right. So that is 1 ounce of pure silver. It's 99.99% pure, and that's interchangeable with a 1 ounce gold eagle, or sorry, 1 ounce silver eagle, I should say. So it's interchangeable with all the other 1 ounce formats, including a 1 ounce silver bar format, you know.
Right.
So that fungibility and interchangeability is important. But with Bitcoin, there's massive, it's not, they talked about decentralization, but it's not actually decentralized because you're hugely dependent on the iPhone, you know, and on technology and on computers that have software on them. Sorry, please charge. Yeah, see the technology there. Please charge. If you run out of the battery, you don't have liquidity. So you don't want to run out of the battery.
Good timing.
Yeah, exactly. That was pure
Must be listening to you, Mark.
Pure synchronicity. Oh, yeah, it is, as we know. So so it's hugely dependent on technology. You know, you don't have liquidity. Nothing can be a store of value or a means of exchange unless you have liquidity. And gold is one of the most liquid assets in the world, you know. With that silver coin I have there, I can go to different dealers all around Dublin and they'll buy it off me.
Right.
And what's interesting about it is they will buy that off me. It's a market rate. It's a free market. Whereas Bitcoin is a very funny market, you know. There's exchanges, there's huge risks in the exchanges. A lot of them have blown up. I know you can have a Trezor wallet. You can take it off your iPhone. You can put it on a Trezor wallet. But you need to get it back from the Trezor wallet onto your iPhone, onto your computer. And on your iPhone, there's different apps, there's different technologies, or any other phone. On your computer, you know, you've got Microsoft Windows, you've got, you know, whatever your search engine is. There's all sorts of, basically, I'm very interested in technology. And when I talk to people I know who are quite senior in the IT security side of things, they basically tell me there are backdoors into everything. And if someone is absolutely determined, not someone, if a very highly paid and powerful entity wants to get into your computer or your iPhone, they can get in there, you know. So why would you have your life savings, your money in something that it only confers liquidity if it's digital? Its only value is via digital, but the digital has huge risks. You know, we're being warned all the time that cyber terror, cyber war, you know, we're being told this is going to come and we're going to have a big reset because of this cyber terror, cyber war. So the amount of vulnerability with the Bitcoin is to me, it's huge. So to me, it's like, fine, you know, have 1 or 2% in Bitcoin as a speculation. Yeah. So I'm not saying don't buy it, but realize it is a speculation. You know, the jury is out, and in time, I could be proven wrong. In time, it's possible. I don't think it will happen, but it's possible that it could become possibly more a store of value than a means of exchange. You know, but it could be used as a means of exchange as well, potentially. But there's a lot of risk there, and I don't think, you look at China, you look at Russia, you look at India. I don't think the majority of the world is going to adopt it, to tell you the truth. You know, I think they will go back to gold and silver. I think we're seeing that, but the younger generation has been positioned by I've seen in the media quite a bit. I was shocked when Bloomberg started almost promoting it in some ways. You know, in the early days. You know, and promote it in a way of saying gold is bad, Bitcoin is good, type of thing. And I was like, geez, that's not very balanced, is it? And then some of the people who were very pro Bitcoin, who was interesting, there are people who are quite anti-gold. And I said, wow, but they're pro Bitcoin because Bitcoin has all the qualities of gold. But it was like, but then why weren't you pro gold in the first place?
Yeah, I know. Honestly, Mark, I've seen multiple of these, like, you know, attempts by the mainstream media to demonize gold. You know, I'd always talk about this ABC documentary back in 2023, early 2023. It was actually the first article I wrote for David Morgan about the Perth Mint, and I watched this documentary, and they're, you know, depicting this criminal from a biker gang walking down the street, going to the Perth Mint, getting some gold, making it into a $250,000 gold chain. He's got tattoos. He's mostly, you know, like, it's just like such a blatant attempt to damage the reputation of gold. And then, you know, the UK, like, The Guardian, I think, called it like an abhorrent tax evasion, or so. Someone, I think it was The Guardian. I don't want to put words in their mouth, but it was a left-leaning, you know, publication in the UK. Like, and it really does make me think, you know, what is their problem with gold? What do they not want us to know? Well,
it's very interesting. I think it's quite important, actually, because there's an anti-gold
sentiment,
which is created by an anti-gold narrative. and I've seen it for years, and I was always amazed by it, and and gold, they'd say gold's a barbaric relic, that was a big thing, the barbaric relic. It's like, it's a barbaric relic from the past, and we're so modern and so sophisticated now, but they're anti-gold because gold blurts out these unpleasant truths,
Correct.
And it confers freedom. That's the big thing, actually. It confers economic freedom. And there's some people who don't want people to be economic free. Sometimes it's a jealousy almost, that you might have a journalist who's, maybe he's not, or she is not that abundant, and they don't want people to be economically free. They don't want people to be abundant, and maybe they can't afford it, to buy it. But some people, their notion of wealth it's a funny one. It's almost a status thing. There is, not so much in America, but definitely in the UK and Ireland, there's this thing that, all your money should go on buying your house and your family home. And therefore all the energy of society is encouraging young people in particular, they have to buy the family home. But there's also a status thing whereby, you trust the government, they've got your back, and gold is sort of, it's for these crazy libertarians who believe in freedom, it's like, what's wrong with you? Do you not trust the government? It's like, I studied history, and unfortunately, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts. Absolutely, that's what Lord Acton said, and it's true, and if you give too much power to governments, it doesn't bode well for anybody, particularly the working and the middle classes, so gold is a way to step outside of that little matrix, shall we say, of government. And today we have quite a corrupt sort of alliance between the governments and giant corporations, which is quite dangerous to the middle classes and to the businesses, the small medium enterprise, which are the backbone of all our economies. So there's a funny thing. I think it's. The barbaric relic thing. Like I heard it so many times, and I pointed out so many times. Keynes never said gold's a barbaric relic. He said the gold standard is a barbaric relic. So it's a very different thing. Like gold is just gold. It's just a piece of metal. How could you be pro or anti it? Like surely you can look at it in terms of the pros and the cons, the benefits. And there are much more benefits with gold than there are negatives. And we've seen this throughout history. It's protected people throughout history, Gold and silver protect people from currency debasement and war throughout history. And they're doing so again in recent years, and that's just absolutely incontrovertible. The only thing that you can say, from my perspective, that's bad, not the only thing, but the primary thing you can say that's bad about gold and silver is the mining. And the how see today in our industry as well, about how we do this in the most the most economically sustainable way, but the environmentally sustainable way. There's a lot of virtue signaling about carbon emissions, and a lot of funny stuff about all the focus about the environment is the carbon emissions, and people driving their cars and people getting on a Ryanair plane or destroying the environment. There's a lot of guilt and shame and fear. It's like a new cult. It's like the Catholic Church of old. Right. It's like you can't fly on the plane because you're destroying the environment, and little children are being programmed to have fear that the end of the world is nigh in terms of this climate apocalypse, crazy stuff, But there are issues in terms of soil and water, and we do mining. It can be destructive if it's not done the right way, So that's but I think they use that genuine concern. And it is a concern that people have. That's one of the primary things that genuine people say to me over the years, saying, "Where does the gold come from? Where does the silver come from? How do we know? It's not destroying the Amazon," as an example.
Right. I mean, to be fair, I will push back a bit there. I think a lot of the gold and silver mining that's done today, the practices are a lot more environmentally friendly, a lot more responsible than they were. There's obviously a long way to go, but I do take your point about this virtue signaling, about the green energy transition. I think some companies, whether it's mining or whatever, I'm not saying mining, I'm saying, just more broadly, claim to be doing all this good work on the environmental front, and actually it's just a lot of words and no substance. Exactly. So I think there's got to be a way to kind of track their actions.
Yeah. And there's some very good players in the mining space who are working very closely with local communities in different places around the world, and they're being genuinely good corporate citizens who are taking care of the local stakeholders, and that's the way it should be. And if that happens, then you have you negate the one potential negative there is about gold and silver, And it does give me a little bit concerned that if we do get, we are going to get a massive gold rush and silver rush again. It's only a matter of time, and then we will have a massive boom in the mining sector. And that's
it's already kind of happening. It's kind of happening in the producers right now. The silver mining companies are starting to follow the gold miners. The juniors are starting to pick up. Like we're kind of in the midst of one now. It's happening, and I don't think we're done yet either, Mark.
No, it's early to middle stages of it, and it's no bad thing. Providing, it's done. You see, it's historically, when you look back, it was pretty horrendous what happened to the people. You're going to South America soon, and you can go into some of the mines in Peru and Bolivia, and the Spanish and the Portuguese just went in and just really it was pretty brutal stuff, and that was seen in many countries around the world. So, and then even the 19th century. So environmentally, it wasn't done in the right way. Whereas now we're much more aware of the environment. There's good environmental regulations in most countries, and the key thing is just water is a very important resource, and from good water we get good food. And I'm very passionate that one of the biggest solutions we have for a lot of the problems we have in the world today, one of the biggest solutions is actually eating organic vegetables and fruit and meat and dairy and good quality food. There's huge opportunities in that space as well, and if we get that right, I'm a big believer in health is true wealth, because I saw in my business there were so many people who were like, I had ultra high net worth clients, who were super, super wealthy. And some of them were not happy at all, and they had mental health issues or they had physical health issues. And the two tend to go together. If you're not, looking after one or the other, they can impact each other. So health is true wealth. And because anyways, I'm going off on a tangent in terms of mining, but mining is, we need to protect the soil and protect the water, and I think mining can be done in a sustainable way, truly, and once that's done, then the media, then you've ticked that last box that they cannot attack on that one or choose not to cover all the benefits of gold.
That's a great point, but they'll find something. They'll spin a campaign.
You're right. Well, it's interesting you said about that. I never saw that ABC documentary.
I'll send you after this. Yeah.
Yeah, frequently it's quite subtle, actually. The anti-gold stuff is quite subtle. I've seen over the years, but that sounds like flagrant propaganda by ABC. Yeah, they really went after the Department. It was quite harsh, too harsh, it's interesting. Like, I mean, even you mentioned tax evasion. Like, I mean, it's ironic because there's billions and billions in all these offshore locations, but some middle class man or woman in London buys a few crew grounds, to protect their savings, and they can be accused of tax evasion. It's talk about tax.
Well, this what it is. It's like they make you feel guilty for wanting to pursue your own freedoms and have individual sovereignty. It's like guilt tripping. It's like, you're really going to put your money outside of the system. You're not going to pay it to this government who's proven time and time again that they misallocate your resources and put it towards an infinite debt spiral. Why would you continuously pay money to someone who has proven they can't manage their money? It's like giving drugs to a drug addict who's proven they're addicted, Yeah,
100%. And that is the primary reason that my clients over the years, they were worried about, they're worried about the devaluation of the currency. They're worried about the banks, and they wanted to protect that money,
Right.
And how dare anybody tell them that they shouldn't, or they're not being good citizens not to do that. I think they're actually being very responsible citizens to actually think for themselves and be proactive and to look at potential solutions, in order to protect themselves from this thing that's been seen throughout history, So, but you're right. It's like it's a socialist thing that they want everybody, we're all in this together. It's a bit like, and the World Economic Forum have their version of it. It's almost like this left-wing thing. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. It's like, so you can't, and then they're trying to position this to the young people as well, that you'll never own your own home. You rent everything. You never own your own car. You rent your own car. But you see, if you have gold and silver, the people who have gold and silver, they use it as a means to an end frequently. And frequently, my clients would own gold and silver with a view to saying, well, I want to buy a plot of land, or I want to buy a business, or, it was always about using it as a saving to buy something or to invest in something else, So they're thinking strategically and thinking long term, They weren't, as portrayed in the media, these sort of evil sort of Scrooge McDucks, who are all, counting their gold and silver coins, like, these evil Scrooges, they're like smog in there with all the gold, like it's ironic because the central banks are the ones who are like smog in effect, they have hoarded all the gold into the central banks, and monopolize it. But it's the socialists, there's a socialist mindset, say in the Financial Times, an example whereby that's okay. But if Mrs. Murphy buys a few sovereigns, that's sort of antisocial, It's you're not thinking about the society as at large, You should be putting that into bonds or keep it in the bank, It's like, well, why would you keep it in the bank when they've been shown to be irresponsible, and sometimes corrupt.
Yeah. So, not only irresponsible, but in some cases, more recently, even like not a performing asset relative to something like gold. From a percentage return basis, the bonds are becoming increasingly unattractive, whilst gold is in the ascendancy. Anyway, I wanted to finish, Matt, with solutions. You're currently embarking on your own kind of solution to the problem with the Irish Central Bank, because they don't mint their own coins, I understand. So you're kind of addressing that with Tower Coins. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, well, they do sort of collectibles, limited edition sort of collectible medals. So I for a long time I had a lot of Irish clients coming, Irish American clients, Irish people all over the world saying, "Why are we buying why are we buying South African Krugerrands, or why are we buying British gold sovereigns with the Queen on them, or Britannias or Eagles or Maples or whatever it was, or Austrian Philharmonics?" The only gold and silver coins in the EU were the Austrian Philharmonics. They're the only euro legal tender. So I didn't have a straight answer for them, and I used to get on to the Irish Central Bank and say, "Well, why don't we have our sovereign coins here? It's not like Austria is some big gold and silver mining producing nation. Why do the Austrians have, we don't have it?" And you could never really get a straight answer. They didn't really know, type of thing. And I sort of encouraged them and said, "Well, that'd be great. I think you should do it." And my company, Goldco, would love to sell them. We think we could sell them really well into the diaspora, and because I did genuine. I had people, Irish Americans saying, "Oh, we'd love to buy these." Why are we buying Krugerrands? So, anyway, long story short, decided to do it. And there's no mint in Ireland except for the Central Bank of Ireland, which has the monopoly. But it's interesting. There is a phenomenon around the world, this sort of decentralization. I think we all realize that decentralization is very important. We need to move away from dependency on governments and on corporations. And that's what the Bitcoin thing has really tapped into, The gold and silver market has tapped into a small bit, but I do think we need to move away from being dependent on the mints, the government mints, and it's funny, they're called legal tender bullion coins, and I was always funny. I was like, okay, so it's a coin if you put a legal tender stamp on it, a dollar stamp on it, or a euro stamp on it, or a pound stamp on it. It's like, that makes it legal tender I was like, but surely the real value, as we know, comes from the intrinsic value.
Right.
So I went and created. I am still thinking about doing a coin as well, because certain jurisdictions, there's tax benefits from doing a coin. So at some stage, we'll do a coin. But I realized 2 years ago, it's much more costly to do a coin, and you need to pay extra money, seigniorage, and you need to pay to get that insignia on it, and that would add to the cost. And I knew I wouldn't be doing big volumes to begin with. So anyway, but basically, long story short, we've created these beautiful. So they're sort of Celtic Irish bullion medals or non-legal tender coins, and they're 4.9 pure, so 99.99% pure. That's the Tree of Life, which is one of the most sacred symbols in the world, most sacred spiritual symbols in the world. It's in most spiritual and religious traditions. And then on this side we have the harp. Ireland is the only nation in the world that has a musical instrument as its national emblem, and we have the tri-spiral, which is well, they don't know because it's a very ancient symbol. It's actually older than the oldest pyramid. There's a solar chamber. solar chamber in Ireland. We don't get great weather in Ireland, so we worship the sun. And we really, really, because we knew if we don't get the sun now in January, February, we're in trouble with the crosslights. And people worship the sun. So there's a solar chamber, and there's an ancient stone that has that exact tri-spiral is at the back of the chamber. Yeah, and December 21st, which is coming up now on the winter solstice, the sun comes up and it penetrates the start of the chamber, and it goes right through to the back of the chamber and hits this tri-spiral. And so they believe that it was almost certainly the masculine and the feminine and then the child, in effect, It was the cycle of nature. But they don't know. They honestly don't know. Other people say it could be the sun, the earth, and the moon. There's different theories about what that treble, the tri-spiral, represents to our ancient ancestors. But it's an old solar chamber. It's older than the oldest pyramid, So anyway, I basically said, right, if I'm going to create something, it has to be 3.9 or 4.9 pure, but it has to capture the essence of the people, because I studied monetary history and ancient Greece and ancient Rome. That was actually my degree, was actually Greek and Roman civilization and history. And I was looking at monetary history, and the emperors would put their faces all over the coins, because it's very interesting. Everything is energy. That's what Einstein told us. Everything is energy. But money is a very, very important form of energy because we're always exchanging. We're exchanging the energy of money. So you have to have good symbols on your money rather than bad symbols, shall we say. And there's been good kings and good queens throughout history. And Queen Elizabeth, God rest her soul, in recent years, she wasn't a bad monarch, as monarchs go, So I didn't have any great issue selling gold sovereigns or gold battalions with Queen Elizabeth II on them, But they do have energy, and you're basically giving your energy to another sovereign. But these are sovereign coins, and the sovereignty comes from the fact that they are, gold and silver are their monetary assets, and they get their value from nature. So all value comes from nature.
And ultimately at their core as well, their economic energy that preserves over time. It's purchasing power maintains, and the economic energy that we entrust in our money of today, or should I call it currency, it's like sand, holding sand in your hands. It just kind of eventually flows through and you lose it.
Exactly.
Like 98% of the dollar's lost its value since 1913. I didn't need to say any more. Exactly, we're going to have to park it there, Mark, unfortunately. I think we were just out of time.
Finish
but please finish, take
just one last thing on that. So I think decentralized money and people having their own stores of value and then potential means of exchange as well, I think is very, very important. I'm very passionate about that. And I suppose just on the Tara coins, so that the name of the company is Tara Gold and Silver Limited, and we've done Tara coins, Tara metals. So a picture paints 1,000 words, but a sacred symbol actually paints 1,000,000 or 1,000,000,000. We used to go for millions, and then we talked about billions, and now we're talking about trillions in terms of the debt that we were talking about before. There's massive inflation and everything. But a sacred symbol, there's actually consciousness in it, So that's what I really want people to be conscious about: why, the why, and the how, and something you said before was very interesting there, Ted, in terms of you're talking about, I suppose, consumption, and we're living beyond our means in some ways, and we need to be more conscious of our consumption. And if we use something, this tap thing, people are just tap, and they go into debt. And then they get into the spiral of overconsumption. They're buying things that they don't need, rubbish they don't need, with money they don't have. It's this vicious debt-based cycle. Whereas if we move back to a more benign cycle, to a virtuous cycle of people actually valuing the money that they have, then they'd be much more conscious of saying, okay, well, I'm not going to buy that piece of junk from China or wherever it's from. I'm actually going to use this to save up for further education, or to travel to Colombia, or to a valuable experience that's going to benefit me as a human being. So people will become, it sounds grandiose, but I think people will become more conscious, and I do think we're on the verge of people waking up from a whole host of different nonsense.
Well, they feel it. They sense it in the air, especially if inflation starts to return in a big way again. They'll feel it and they'll say, hang on a minute, my money's not holding its value here. Where can I park it? Where can I put it to preserve its value? And obviously tarot coins would be a great option for people. You know, I understand one in four Americans have Irish heritage, so potentially as we coming up to Christmas, a good little Christmas gift.
Exactly. That you've come full circle beautifully. So that's why I'm amazed with Bullion that we haven't actually put them into as beautiful gifts, you know. So that has a certificate of authenticity. That's a beautiful 0.1 ounce. So it's a 10th of an ounce, 3.1 grams, a lovely size that people, you know, a lot of people can't afford 1 ounce gold, obviously, you know. So I think people should be buying bullion and giving them as gifts, you know. Why do we do this jewelry? Markups on jewelry are absolutely astronomical. People have no idea the amount of margin that the jewelry manufacturer making is huge, you know, and people just buy it because of the marketing and it's romantic, you know. So and plus the VAT on jewelry, whereas there's no VAT on bullion, you know. Well, particularly in gold bullion. On silver, there can be VAT depending on different jurisdictions, you know. So thank you for mentioning the gift word. And this Christmas, people should be buying gifts. The people in the bullion industry need to start, you know, practice what we preach. You know, if you truly believe in something, you should be, you know, you should be buying it and using it, not just as a way to make money type of thing, you know. Let's use it amongst ourselves even, you know, as much as we can, you know. And brilliant, Ted. I really enjoyed the interview. Good talking to you.
Yeah,
sorry,
you too, Mark,
any other questions there? I think
we're just out of time. We usually have to cut it short an hour, so we've been about an hour, but okay, I think it's been a great conversation, very wide ranging again, and you're welcome to come back anytime soon. We'll leave you links in the description as well. Do you have a Twitter handle we can use as well?
It's at Mark T. O'Byrne.
Perfect.
Exactly.
And you do update your audience with a lot of gold and silver related news as well as special offers on Tara and stuff like that.
I do indeed, yeah. And at taracoins.com, they can sign up for the newsletter as well.
Perfect.
I'll be doing a little bit more, you know, interviews like this. I'll be sharing with people basically. So,
Great. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for coming on, and thank you for listening.